Hi there guys, and welcome to my video just a short little video on trading. I've been asked loads of questions about how I trade, and I do trade a lot. As if you see my collection on the stream, it's fairly vast, including lots of legendaries and lots of foils and gold borders and all kinds of premium cards as well. So I've wanted to do this video for a while, and I'm just getting a chance now, so I hope you enjoy it. I will say before I go any further that this is just my opinion on how I trade, of course. Other people probably have different trading ways, and I'm not saying this is cut and dry, this is how you trade, because that would be completely wrong. This is just my opinion on how I trade. Alright then, let's go into the value of cards. So the normal value of cards, if you go from just working up, so if you go common to uncommon, like a decent, obviously, actually no, I'll start off with tier lists, apologies. I'll start off with tier lists. So basically, each card, depending on how much it's used at the time in the meta, how many are available and such like, it can be a high tier, mid tier, or low tier card, depending on what. So you can have a high tier rare is worth a lot more, obviously, than a low tier rare. So if you're looking at the values, so you look at like usually an uncommon is worth 2 or 3 commons. And you kind of work it up like that. So a rare is worth I'd say 2 to 4 uncommons. A rare, depending on how good it is worth 2 to 4 uncommons. But generally, I like to trade rare for rare, legendary for legendary, epic for epic kind of thing. I would never do a trade where I'm giving a legendary and I'm getting like 30 commons for it. I'd never do a trade like that personally. I prefer to do it more evenly based, because they have more value that way. They actually do have more value that way, in my opinion. So then you're working up, so going from rares to epics. So a epic is usually worth, again, I'd say 2 to 4 rares, depending on the epic, on how good it is. Like Dark Wishes at the moment are probably the highest tier, and then you've got things like Ao Shun, which are kind of low tier, which are basically never used in decks, and that's why they're such low tier. So they're probably worth about 2 decent mid tier rares, but then a Dark Wish is probably worth maybe up to 3 high tier rares, at least 3 or 4 high tier rares, depending on how much you want it. And so that leads up into legendaries as well. Legendaries are different as well, I would say. I'd say people obviously want to trade. People want to trade more and more and more for legendaries, because they're the ultimate kind of card to get. So you've got to be careful with the legendaries. Like most legendaries are kind of worth, I'd say, at least 3 epics, at least, and beyond that, I think it depends on the legendary, of course. Like say if at the moment an alpha one isn't worth that much, but I'd recommend holding on to them because they are probably going to get a buff at sometime soon. So yes, but I want to talk about individual cards because I hope this video carries on as well. So let's talk a bit about premiums. The way I trade for premiums, because I trade for them a lot. The way I value premiums is usually, so if we take a gold card and we take a normal card, yeah? It's the same card, but one of them's obviously gold. The gold one, depending on how rare it is, I usually rate about double to 2.5 the value. 2.5 times the value of the actual card, depending on the rarity of it, because obviously there are going to be more commons and uncommon golds out there than there will be epics and legendaries, so it decreases even more the higher tier up. So obviously a gold legendary is worth loads. It's worth loads, and the same with the gold epic or a foil epic. Switches the same for foils and golds. I'll talk about platinums in a minute. So I usually value them at that, depending on how high the card is. So let's say you've got a gold paladin, for example. It's going to be worth a hell of a lot more than a gold what's another low tier rare, like a gold Gilan. It's going to be worth a lot less, but it's still going to be double to two and a half times the value. Double premium cards, on the other hand, are a different story. Where it's a gold and a foil, I usually go to 3 to 4 times the value, usually. Or depending on what the other person needs and such like as well. Okay, I'll start talking about platinums. Platinums are a whole different story in my opinion, because platinums are very limited. Golds and foils will always, over time, they will lose their value. They will. Yeah, golds and foils, because you can pull them from packs, you can pull them from riff runs. They more and more and more and more is going to be generated, so you will lose value on those. Platinums are the opposite. They keep getting more and more value out of them. So, obviously the core set, which you could only pre-order, which was way back when the game first came out, those are probably the most worth cards in the game. So if you have any core platinums, they're probably base value 4 to 5 times the value. Again, these are all my opinions. This is how I value stuff when I'm trading for it, and things. Other people do it differently. I do it this way, and it seems to work well, and people are happy with the trade. So, when you get to Rise, obviously there's more pre-orders for Rise than there were core set. So you can still find a few platinum rares out there, which are still very rare. Of course, they're still very worthwhile. So you've got to be careful of where you go that, but I'd say probably about them, they're about 3 to 4 times the value as well, depending on how good the card is, depending on how much you want it as well. And then moving on to the Infestation set, obviously the Infestation set is still fairly new. The cost of platinums at the moment, I'd say, is probably like maybe 2 times the value, something around that. Like, it's a lot less than the other ones because there's a lot of them around at the moment. There's still quite a few around of them at the moment because there were exponentially more pre-orders for Infestation than there was any other set previously. Give it 6 months and their value will probably increase to 3 times the value. Something that basically, the longer the time goes on, the rarer the cards will get. So, yeah, you've got to take that into account. Another thing you do have to take into account when you're trading is how much you want it. How much you put value on the card, either that you want or you're trading away. Because if someone wants a card for a specific deck, they really want this card, they really want this foil or whatever, they're obviously going to pay a bit more for it because they really want it. So you do have to take in consideration that. So when I trade, I think about these things. I think about the base value of the card, of if it was just a normal. If it's a premium, I think about, okay, what kind of value is going to this? What I can get for it? Can I get an epic for it? Can I get is it going to be like 3 or 4 rares instead? What am I going to trade for it? What would be the best value for me? Because obviously when I trade, I have most cards. I have pretty much every single card in the game. So when I trade for value. I don't necessarily trade more for need because I don't really need anything. When I trade, I'm usually trading for premiums and such like. So I look at it differently to some people, but I can understand because I did trade for cards that I needed for specific decks. So I know what it's like to trade like that. So if you're trading for a specific deck, obviously they're going to pay more for it, such like. So you get a better deal out of it. I will say, don't rip people off. Like, just don't do it. I don't do it. Some people do to new players, and it's just not fair. I give everyone a fair deal. Obviously, I do haggle a bit because at the end of the day, I want the best trade. And if I think I can get a bit more out of him or I can do it for less, I will do it. But I don't bring it down so much that I just completely rip them off. Because that is just not fair. So make sure you do fair trades. There are tier lists on the forums that you can check out. I haven't got a tier list myself. I might make one. But the tier lists are on the forums and stuff like that. I will say that, again, this is my opinion. This is how I trade. It's not how you should trade. I'm not telling you how to trade. I'm just telling you how I go about it and when I think about it. One thing I will say as well is a lot of people use the stores that are selling cards For valuations, don't do that, because some of them are really overpriced, and if you do that, one guy is, or about 3 or 4 people are basically making up the trade values, which is just ridiculous. The community makes up the trade values, so you value them of what you think they are. So hope that was useful for you guys. I really appreciate you watching the videos. Please check out my stream if you want any more information about trading or anything else or whatever. So thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate you watching this video, and I will see you next time. Thanks, guys.